Let's move over to Europe now, where talks aimed at ending Russia's war in Ukraine have entered what the United States is calling a critical week. US President Donald Trump, who has launched a major diplomatic push since taking office in January, is pressuring both sides to reach a deal. Trump urged Russian President Vladimir Putin to stop shooting and to sign a deal to end the fighting, warning that without quick progress, the US could walk away from its role as a broker. Let's take a listen to Trump's comment.
Well, I want him to stop shooting, sit down and sign a deal. And we have the confines of a deal, I believe, and I want him to sign it and be done with it and just go back to life.
Speaking after his meeting with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, Pope Francis's funeral in Rome, Trump said he believes Zelensky is ready to give up Crimea as he spoke as a part of a peace settlement, despite Zelensky's repeated public denials. Let's take a listen in to Trump's comment.
Is Zelensky ready to give up Crimea, do you think, Mr. President? Oh, I think so, yeah. Look, Crimea was 12 years ago.
Trump described his meeting with Zelensky as going well, but expressed disappointment that Russia continued attacks on Ukraine shortly after their Vatican talks. This comes as over the weekend, Russian missile and drone strikes killed 4 people and wounded more than a dozen across eastern Ukraine. This is what Trump said about his meeting with Zelensky.
Vladimir Zelensky, and how did that meeting go? I think the meeting went well. We'll see what happens over the next few days. We'll probably learn a lot. I was very disappointed that missiles were flying by Russia, but that missiles were flying. Very disappointing. We'll see how it...
Meanwhile, President Zelensky pushed back against Moscow's claims about the battlefield. He said Ukraine's forces had not been kicked out of Russia's Kursk region, despite Moscow claiming the liberation of its western region. We are joined by Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Nalapat. Obviously, we've seen over the past couple of days a possible souring on the Russian President Vladimir Putin by US President Donald Trump. What are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts of the current state of diplomatic relations and the state of this peace deal?
Well, about a peace deal, I'm not at all sure, for a simple reason that Ukrainians are living in a fantasy world, at least where President Zelensky is concerned, and Trump is living in a fantasy world. The Russians are not going to stop their kinetic attack until they capture as much territory as they feel is important for their secretary. And the point is that as far as the US is concerned, well, I think Trump is losing leverage with the Russians. If he comes down heavily on them, he's going to lose leverage to the Russians. The fact is that Zelensky is talking about giving up Crimea, but they're not going to do that. If Zelensky is around, they will restart the war sometime and retake Crimea. And as a consequence, Moscow is aware of that. So they're very clear. They want as much territory as possible so that even if a war is restarted, it will be within safe boundaries. So I'm sorry, I think we are far away from a peace deal.
Professor Nalapat, are you saying when you say that both Ukraine and Donald Trump are living in a fantasy world, are you saying that Russia can't be bargained with?
Look, I'm saying that the Russians realize that the bulk of the Ukrainian state is now anti-Russia. I'm saying that it is a mistake, frankly, to push the boundaries of NATO and to get involved in the Ukraine war. But the reality is it has taken place. Now, the fact is that even if Zelensky says he wants peace, what he wants is a temporary ceasefire where he can regroup, mobilize, and launch a fresh attack. That's what happened the first time around. And I can tell you very clearly, the Russians are aware of that, and they're going to push on. Whether the United States likes it or not, they're going to push on. Donald Trump would like a quick diplomatic victory. He believes in quick victories and quick successes, which is probably why his popularity has reached the lowest level of any US president unless you go back to Dwight D. Eisenhower. But the reality is we're very far from a peace deal. The Russians are not going to stop because they know the Ukrainians are not sincere about a lasting. They're only wanting a ceasefire to regroup and attack again.
Professor Nalapat, I want to get your immediate reaction to North Korea's admission that it has sent troops to Ukraine, its first admission after reports. How should the international community react to this development?
Well, North Korea is probably even more sanctioned than Russia. So I really don't see how the international community can react. The reality is North Koreans are spending whatever money they can steal from crypto or whatever on their nuclear and missile program because the Kim family is aware that's the only protection. After seeing what happened to Gaddafi, after seeing what happened to Saddam Hussein, they're not going to give up their WMD. So the reality is North Korea is in, and North Korea and China are very closely linked. But for a wink and a nod from China, the North Korean troops would not be fighting on behalf of the Russian side. So I think that's something for those who keep talking about China wanting peace. The reality is the Chinese are interested in keeping the pot boiling in Ukraine because they're focusing on Taiwan and they want as much attention to be diverted to Europe as possible. And the Ukraine war is serving that extremely well.
Madhav Nalapat, thank you very much for your insights, as always.